Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, for another Green Box Politics Classic. And I just want to thank everyone for tuning in, liking the videos, commenting on the videos. We've been getting a lot of good responses and feedback from the public. So I just want to show some appreciation to that. And please continue to share these videos with people that you are associated with, friends and family, so you all could gain some kind of enlightenment from that and some kind of education could come from it. All right. So once again, I just want to thank the people for supporting the Midnight Mirage page, the Red Stick Family page, the music we're doing, those of you that have purchased the book, and those that will continue to support future things that we come out with. So this wouldn't be anything if it wasn't for the people. So understand that the Midnight Mirage production business, the Red Stick Family business, Our Fortune business, all of the businesses associated with, my whole campaign is for the people. It's grassroots. So we wouldn't be anything without the people. So I just want to thank you all for that. All right. So what I want to do in this video is we're going to elaborate on a little more details that were alluded to in our prior video when we talked about the good brother, Mr. Larry Bishop, and his unfortunate death in 2005. All right. So in this video, we want to talk about two articles that were put out around that time period that will provide an objective viewpoint. So you could look into, some journalism, some investigative journalism that was done by people that worked in media at that time period. And also, too, I want to say this before you listen to this video. If you didn't listen to part one on Larry Bishop's story, the Bishop of the 144,000, please pause this and go and listen to that video, because that'll give you a lot of background information and it'll kind of catch you up to speed to some of the stuff we're going to talk about in this video. OK, so in this video, ultimately, we're going to talk about two articles that I'll put out around that time period so you can get an objective viewpoint of the story. And I also want to talk about, just from my own angle and from my own opinion and my own perspective, from my own meditations and from my own contemplations, I want to give you some of the reasons of why did this play out the way that it did. OK, and I'm going to be very, very general, because I'm going to leave cliffhangers and leave it open ended. So in the future, when the Lord wants that space and time to appear, more will come out from this. I'll just say that and leave it at that. OK, so if you know, I'm going to say it at that. And I'm going to leave it at that. All right. So before we read our articles, let's do some brief examination on the situation. OK, why did it play out the way that it did? All right. When I evaluated it, even back then when I was a young man in my early teens, one of the things that came to my mind was lack of strategic planning. OK, lack of strategic planning. Now, although I know that, throughout Black America and, the streets, a lot of these, gangs, neighborhood crews, the warfares that we have and involve ourselves in, and some of the traumatic things that happen from that, at the root inception of a lot of it, they're not serious conflicts. It's not like something that's a Ukraine versus Russia type of conflict. So although the root of the conflicts aren't serious, but what they turn into is something that's very serious, is very deadly, and is very dangerous. So the streets is something that's very, very dangerous, although a lot of the inception of the problems don't come from something serious. All right. So, us consciously engaging into street warfare, we knew what we were doing. I knew what I was doing. I knew what I signed up for. I knew what it came with. But I also knew that it had limitations in it. Or at least for myself, I had limitations. So there was a certain awareness that I had in the streets. All right. And when you're going to be involved in the streets, you got to accept what comes with that. And what can come with that is death, jail, etc. So when Larry was, jumped at the BP, right, and he came up with an idea to retaliate against these people that jumped him, Larry was not off for thinking that. This was something that was regular during that time period. There were a lot of fights and, battles that we were having on the daily basis, the weekly basis. So it was not odd for him to think that if these dudes just jump me, then there's going to be some retaliation. There's going to be some get back from it. There was not odd for him to think that. There were a lot of times where somebody either in the Mafia or 220 or Amp Squad, something may have happened, and then the rest of the crew was made aware of it, and there was some type of retaliation and a get back for it. That's just part of the game, and that's what come with it, right? So the first thing is that it was not off for Larry to think that I want to get these niggas back for jumping me, right? But as far as the planning of how you're going to get these people back, as far as where you're going to get these people back, as far as who are actually you going to get back on, as far as who's going to be with you when you retaliate. That whole strategic planning aspect of it, in my opinion, it was missing. It was lacking. Now, I got to also put it in a discount to where, as I said, we were all young teenage men, and our brains were still developing. The frontal lobe and a certain brain of the young man, it don't really develop fully until he's in his mid to late 20s. So us making poor choices and poor decisions, I'll provide a little bit of a discount, even though we have to be accountable for that. But we still were young men. So when you are a young teenage man, you're not going to come up with these, high level strategic CIA plans, because everybody's brain don't work on that level. But there got to be some type of a planning with it. And you got to understand too that, when these dudes caught Larry slipping and they jumped him at the BP, this sent Larry in a rage, and he was furious from this. And you got to understand, when you got brothers in the streets and, we're being, taken over and influenced by anger, this could be a deadly combination when you got young men, guns, anger, and impulsiveness. And when I say impulsiveness, meaning that, you're not really thinking too deep into what you do. You're not thinking about all the different dimensions and how that domino effect is going to play out from the move that you make. Okay. So what was very, very unfortunate to me is that, in that space and time when Larry was furious about being jumped, that the emotions of anger and wrath and him being mad and pissed off, it overwhelmed his consciousness. But that's also understandable too. Think about it. If some guys caught you slipping and jumped you, you would be mad as well. All right. So I can't really get mad at him for, being pissed off about what happened and letting his emotions overcome him. But this is where the next problem that came in, which was lack of leadership. Because let's say that something happened to one of the guys and he wants to retaliate, right? And I know this because I've been involved in situations where something happened and I was made aware of it. And now it's like, we got to get some get back. See, something may have happened to one of the bros and it didn't happen to me. It didn't happen to me directly, but I'm going to be mad about the shit too, right? But I may not be as furious as the brother that it initially happened to. So me being a little bit more in tune with my emotions in that state and being a little more calm-minded, and I'm just speaking on myself, I would typically try to come up with some strategy or how are we going to go about doing this? Or at the very least, the brother that's mad, can you at least tell me what you are planning or what you are thinking about doing? How do you want to express the retaliation? And a lot of times when the brothers will tell me something and it would make sense, I'll say, okay, bet, let's go do what we're going to do. But there were also times where brothers may have, given me their feedback on what they wanted to do. And I wasn't convinced that this was a good plan, or I wasn't convinced that, man, this may not play out the way that we think. And a lot of the times, I would choose not to involve myself in that because I'm like, this don't sound right, So, and with that comes, not being afraid of people looking at you a certain type of way. Now, me, fortunately, I was always the type of guy to be able to speak up and say things that needed to be said. And I never really gave a fuck about what nobody thought about me, especially when I'm speaking on the truth and I'm standing on principle. So it was a lot of times where, shit would go down and I may have not been there, or some of the bros may have been getting ready to go do something and they may have not even told me because they know I may try to talk them out of it or say, man, this is stupid, or man, we need to go do this another way or another day, And in this situation, it appears that that type of a higher counsel and guidance and influence, maybe that was missing at this moment with Larry, because yes, he's mad and he's angry and he wants the retaliation, but maybe some of the people that were around him could have stepped up in certain areas of leadership and said, okay, we can retaliate, but it got to be a little more strategic. And, was Larry asked, how do you want to retaliate? How do you plan on getting the get back? And if Larry was asked this and he gave his response, was his response satisfactory to the people he was telling it to? Did they think that this is a good idea and I'm going to go with it? Or did they think that this is not a good idea, but I'm still going to go with it? What were these people thinking? Okay. So I'm going to put a certain accountability on lack of leadership to some of the individuals that may have been around during this time period when this situation went down with Larry, okay? And for those that you know, like I say, for those who know, you know what I'm saying? And when I say lack of leadership, I mean this. As we're going to find out in a little bit, you know, there was ultimately a house party that Larry went to where the situation happened. So understand that you have to travel to the house party because Larry traveled to the house party and Larry was not alone. Okay, Larry was with people. So Larry was with some people and they traveled to this house party. So what was the conversation like on the way to the house party? What was the temperature like in the car? Did everybody traveling with Larry to the house party engage or want to engage in what was about to happen? Did everybody have awareness of what was about to happen? So these are some of the questions that, you know, I've thought about from back then and even to this day. But as I said, all the details and everything will unfold the way it's supposed to. We just going on a little journey with this, all right, and leaving some cliffhangers. But that's the case. And then I'm going to say this, too. Let's say that you had individuals, you know, participating in Larry traveling to the party, but maybe they didn't really want to do this. Maybe these were people involved in the streets because they wanted clout and reputation. And that is another reason why things played out the way that it did. Niggas in the streets chasing clout, chasing reputation, and wanting to have a certain kind of face card and being seen as a gangster. And niggas playing gangster, but really not gangster like they playing it. That was also a lot of it, too. See, when you're involved in the streets, everybody is not this cutthroat, stomp down gangster, meaning that they willing to get on some gladiator shit, whether it's the hand-to-hand combat or knives, or the deeper level when it comes to stepping on something and really blowing somebody down. You know, you got different levels of that. So, for example, with myself, I was real big on the fighting. I didn't care if it was 1-on-1, 2-on-2, group versus group, if we was outnumbered, if niggas had knives, like none of that really concerned me. You know what I'm saying? Because I felt like I was prepared for that and I was mentally in tune with that type of a warfare. But when it came to, let's say, firearms, for example, at that age period, I didn't have firearms. I didn't have a gun. So I wasn't one of them type of guys that was going around the streets playing like I got a gun and playing like I shoot somebody and then other people seeing me with a gun. So now I'm being known for having a gun. No, that was not the case. You know what I'm saying? For those that knew me back then, they'll tell you, like, you know, I never saw Chaz with a gun. You know what I'm saying? But he definitely wasn't scared of nothing. But I didn't see him with a gun. So that means that if you were one of these people back then and you were being seen with a firearm, that meant that people are going to assume you using it, right? If I see somebody with a basketball, I'm going to assume he plays basketball with it. You're not going to have the basketball just collecting dust in your closet. So if I'm seeing niggas in the streets with firearms and guns, it is safe to assume that maybe these niggas either using the guns or will use them. Other than that, why is it with you in the streets? I could have easily went and got a gun. We used to hit licks back then and all types of stuff, but I personally knew that I wasn't really mad enough at nobody to want to shoot them and take their life. Maybe not even a shooting aspect, but maybe let's say to take somebody's life from these beefs that we have in the streets. I wasn't really that mad at somebody, so there's no point in me having a firearm. But what can I speak on? I can speak on that it was niggas back then that had firearms, walking around like they was gangster, having people probably think that they'll shoot. But now when the ultimate situations come, you catch the cold feet. And I think a little bit of that was involved as well. Also, you got to factor in, too, just wanting to be seen as this gangster and want niggas to think that, you know, that you about that life and you really in the field like that. But deep down inside, you really don't want to do this shit. But you don't know how to tell Larry, man, I don't think we should do this. Or, man, maybe we should go about this another way. Did you not want to tell Larry that because you didn't want Larry to look at you like you was a bitch? Or you ain't want other niggas in the squad or in the dub or the mafia to clown you and roast you and make you feel a certain type of way about that? Could a little bit of that have been going on in the subconscious minds of some of the people involved? I would like to say yes. All right. As I told you all before, y'all, I was around a lot of niggas, man, that was doing wild shit. And some of the wild stuff that they was doing, especially with firearms, I wasn't necessarily going to be willing to do that. So it was times where I'd be like, bro, man, you know what I'm saying? We don't need to do all that or whatever. And, you know, sometimes guys would kind of joke with me, like, oh, bro, man, you tripping or whatever. But I never really looked at that as like a peer pressure or, you know, there was never no peer pressure on me to where I felt like, man, I don't want to tell these niggas not to do it because I don't want them to think I'm a bitch. And then if they think I'm a bitch, then now all of a sudden niggas gonna try me or niggas gonna outcast me or something like that. Like, I didn't have that type of fear inside of me. I was very, very secure with who I was as a man, as a young teenager at that time period. So, like I said, I didn't give a shit what nobody thought about me. But I can't say that that was the same case for other people. You had other niggas that weren't really secure with themselves like that, and they couldn't say, hey, Larry, man, let's go about this another way. Or, hey, Larry, let's make sure that X, Y, and Z is with us when we do this. Or, in other words, making sure that this shit is strategic and all the T's are crossed and all the I's are dotted. Certain niggas didn't step up in that area, and that's the lack of leadership, okay? And I also want to say this, too. That lack of leadership comes in with whomever Larry was calling that day to inform them on what happened and what his plan was, and was asking them people to join him. And I'm going to leave it at that, okay? And the last thing I want to talk about is this. Now, I'm not saying that this is what Larry was doing, but other people were doing this, and I was made aware of this as I got older. But when I was younger in the streets, when I was 13, 14, 15 years old in the streets, you know, I'm really out there for the action, and I'm out here with the brothers, you know what I'm saying? People I grew up with and people that I had close relationships with, and I didn't really care about fighting. Like I said, we grew up, man, doing karate, watching wrestling, you know what I'm saying? So fighting was nothing really. But I didn't know that some people was only active in the streets because females were attracted to that. And a lot of niggas was using that street face card to get pussy. Yeah, I didn't know that shit. When I was 13, 14 years old, I didn't know that niggas was using like a street gangster face card in order to get pussy from females that try to make it seem like they this hard, tough, hardcore type of person just because the women seem like they liked it. So now you taking on this persona just to attract women. I didn't know niggas was doing that. I didn't really become aware of that until I got a little bit older. You know, and then I'm talking to some of the older brothers who was letting me know certain things too. And I'm putting two and two together. But the main reason why I didn't know that people were doing that is because I wasn't doing that. I didn't never use the streets to try to look like I'm this gangster to attract women, because I had other ways to attract women. I was smart. You know what I'm saying? I was a handsome, attractive young man. I was athletic. You know, I had so much other stuff going on for me to where I didn't have to act like this fake gangster in order to get women. So why would I assume that other people are? But a lot of that was happening too. So now you got people that want to involve themselves in situations that Larry is involved in, of course, and they thinking that, well, a certain street reputation and face card that's going to come from this, and the status points that's going to come from this, and the different ejaculation and climaxes that's going to come from this when these bitches think that I'm associated with this shit and we looking like we some real gangsters. Now, I'm going to pause for 5 seconds and let you think about that. All right. So just to conclude, you know, some of my thoughts on all that, you know, I didn't know that, but I'm just here to tell you all right now. And a lot of that is going on. A lot of street shit in the streets and these personas that niggas is doing, these face tattoos, you know what I'm saying? And all the shit that they doing is really just to attract bitches. These niggas is so insecure. They don't have no sense of self or none of that. And they seeing other people in the streets who are just being their organic selves. But you think that that person is acting. So now you start trying to act like this street person so you can get this attention of this, so you can get the same type of attention that this other nigga in the streets is getting that you looking up to. And there was a lot of that going on. You know what I'm saying? But that wasn't my thought process, so I didn't know that that was the case. So when you include people being immature, impulsive, emotional, lack of strategic planning, lack of leadership, clout chasing, and then being tender dick, I hate to say it, but somebody gonna die. Somebody gonna die if you got all that in a gumbo pot. And a lot of those elements were included in this unfortunate situation. So what we're gonna do right now is I'm gonna read from one of the articles that I found, and it was by the Associated Press. It was put out on April 26, 2005 at 11:10 a.m. Okay, so this was actually put out the next week after the unfortunate situation, okay? So we're going to read this and then we're going to analyze some stuff and connect it to other things that we already know about. So it says students stay home because after gang violence rumors. So the name of this article is Students Stay Home Because After Gang Violence Rumors. All right. Half of the students at Clay County High School stayed home or left early on Monday amid rumors of pending gang violence. The rumors spread among Mundy's Mill High School's 1,900 students that gang members would try to retaliate for the death of senior Larry Bishop Jr., who was fatally shot at a house party on Saturday. Quote, "I don't need no bullets in me," said the Mundy's Mill senior Andre Davis, who was among the 1,044 students absent on Monday. Now, remember in the prior tape, it was named Bishop of the 144,000, and I talked about how that number 144 had a significant role in this, and how in the book of Revelations, there were 144,000 allowed into the kingdom of Israel or New Jerusalem. So I found that to be very interesting how 1,044 students stayed home from school that Monday. And I remember this because there were a lot of rumors and, you know, it was a lot of back and forth going on. So I can't really blame the students. But yeah, after we got in that fight in school and all the blood and chaos that was on the floors in school, that shit created another type of energy and another type of dark wave and dark vibration. And it actually caused half of, over half of the Mundy's Mill population to actually stay home from school. Lieutenant Greg Porter, commander of Clay County Schools resource officers, said his department did hear talk that, quote, gangbangers were going to shoot up Mundy's Mill to avenge Bishop's death. Authorities could not substantiate the hearsay, but police stepped up vigilance at Mundy's Mill and near Lovejoy High School as a precaution, Porter said. What I'm going to say right here is this. A lot of that was rumor. At that time period, for one, we already knew who we were beefing with. We knew who we were beefing with. We knew where they were from. We knew what size of town they were on. We knew what streets they lived in. We knew what neighborhoods they were living in. And to my knowledge, I don't remember hearing anybody talk about going and shooting up Mundy's Mill on that Monday because of what happened. So there was a lot of fear and projection that was created from that fight in school on Friday. And then, the subsequent events that happened that weekend. So as I said, I can't really blame the students for these rumors being created and for them coming to that type of a conclusion. All right. It goes on to say on Monday, more than a dozen county police cars patrolled the subdivision surrounding Mundy's Mill. At least 4 extra officers were stationed at the school campus where one school resource officer typically is assigned. Even with the increased security, some parents pulled their kids out of school after hearing about the gang activity. The increased vigilance comes just 2 weeks after Clayton officials decided to bring drug-sniffing dogs and handheld metal detectors to high school campuses to crack down on school violence and crime, or school crime and violence. In addition, Mundy's Mill principal Anthony W. Smith called for an emergency meeting this Thursday to talk with parents and community about the gang issue. The 52,000 student system has been racked by several high-profile incidents during the past 2 months. Last week, 2 elementary school students brought a gun to school, police said. Bishop was one of 2 Clay County High School students who was killed in separate shootings last weekend. Crystal Williams, a Forest Park High School freshman, died after being hit by gunfire outside a friend's birthday party Friday. Formal charges were expected Tuesday against 4 teenagers. We actually did a Green Box Politics story on the young woman, Crystal Williams, who was from Forest Park, and her unfortunate death. And, what's very, very insidious and sick about that weekend of April 22nd, April 23rd, and April 24th, that the young girl, Crystal, she unfortunately was shot and hit by gunfire on that Friday, April 22nd. And Larry's situation happened on April 23rd. Hers happened in Forest Park and Larry's happened in Jonesboro. So they was on 2 different sides of the South Side. But it's kind of just showing you the climate and the temperature during that time period And also Larry's situation and Crystal's situation were not related. Okay. So that was just a very, very, just crazy, events that happened back to back like that. And then it goes on to say, formal charges were expected Tuesday against 4 teenagers, a 15-year-old, 2 17-year-olds, and an 18-year-old allegedly involved in Williams' death, said Captain Jeff Turner. Police also made an arrest in an earlier fight that they said led to Bishop's shooting. Monday's Mill student is one of the boroughs I grew up with. I'm going to call him by his nickname, Lope. He from Palisades. Remember I told y'all in school that Friday what happened was is me and one of the guys, we used to always eat lunch. And after lunch was over, long story short, I saw him fighting. And he was outnumbered and he was surrounded by the enemy. Okay, and when I saw that, that's when I jumped in and I did what I did. So the fight at Monday's Mill High School is what they're talking about. Now, because I was 15 years old, I was a juvenile, so they left my name out of all the media. But my homeboy, he was 17, so his name is actually in it. But, for just this, I'm going to just say his nickname, okay? Monday's Mill student Loke of Riverdale was charged with battery Monday for cutting a rival gang member's face during a campus brawl. First of all, let me say this. Loke did not cut the dude during the campus brawl, okay? Blackbeard did not cut the dude during the campus brawl. What happened was Blackbeard knocked the guy out. That's what happened. And when I hit the guy one time, it split his lip. And it created a lot of blood, and it was a very, very exaggerated wound. So the way the wound looked, it looked as if he had been cut in the mouth. And he ran with that story himself, because even the guy that we fought, he was in the streets acting like he was this gangster. But when the news interviewed him and people started asking him questions and all the administrators and stuff, he took the role as like he was this victim. But really, he was in the streets doing the same shit as us, as just on the opposite end. He was antagonizing, my homeboy. That's why they ended up getting into a fight. But it was very interesting how he got on the news. And it was on all the news stations. I remember seeing it on Channel 11 at this time period. Yeah, but he actually got on the news. It was talking about they had to jump me and all this other stuff, right? But no, nobody cut the guy, okay? That was one of the rumors. And then it goes on to say, Michelle Williams, who will bury her 14-year-old daughter Thursday, says she hopes Crystal's death will be a wake-up call to other students. When we were at the hospital, I made some of them go back and see what it looked like to be shot so that they would know, so that they could know it could be one of them next. That's some deep shit right there, man. Very, very unfortunate, deep shit. So the main thing I wanted you all to get out of this article was the fact that, some of the background stuff going on at the school, that a lot of the students that Monday, 1,044 students out of 1,900 students stayed home from school. I'll never forget that. It was once again, if you went to Clay County or if you went to Monday's Mill or Clay County schools at this time period, you know about this. You know what I'm saying? Because it was all over the news. But this is what happened. And also, too, that the young girl, Crystal Williams, her death happened this same weekend. All right. And she was on another Green Box Politics episode. So next, we're going to read from the Clayton News Daily website. And this article was put out May 27, 2005 by Ed Brock. And it's called Arrest Made in Teen Killing. So that means, not too soon after this situation happened, some arrests were made. And that's another thing, too, like the investigative part of this that was involving the police at this time period, because I was dealing with the juvenile system from the fight and the battery charge that I had. I wasn't really in the loop with that situation until I talked to people who were involved in it. But in other words, the police started asking questions. And then you got to remember, too, that this was at a house party. So there were a lot of witnesses. So once the police started asking them questions and did their investigation, let's just say that they found out what they wanted to find out, okay? Now let's read this article. Let me take a sip of water real quick. All right. Clay County police have made several arrests in the shooting death of a Monday's Mill High School student, including the alleged gunman. Octavius Rashad Abercrombie, 18, of College Park, is charged with malice murder in connection with the April 23rd shooting death of Larry Bishop Jr. at a party in Whaley's Lake subdivision near the school, Clayton County Police Captain Jeff Turner said. Clayton County police officers and members of the Clayton County Sheriff's Office Fugitive Squad arrested Abercrombie without resistance at his girlfriend's house on Adena Lane around 5:25 a.m. Friday. So the guy that they ended up arresting was this dude named Art, who was from College Park. And notice he was 18 years old. I was 15. So what happened was that a lot of the dudes we was beefing with, they had connections to people from Shady Park, College Park, the Greater Hit Squad, you know, in certain parts of like Zone 4, that whole part of Atlanta, Southwest part. And these guys were starting to come over into Riverdale, and we were going to war with them. But I didn't know who these people were because I didn't grow up in College Park. I grew up in Riverdale. But I remember hearing this name Art a lot, you know, after this situation. So when Larry was, shot and killed, initially this dude Art was charged with malice murder. So let's continue to read. Also arrested earlier this month in connection with Bishop's shooting were 21-year-old Jonathan Scott and 19-year-old Jeremy Womack of Jonesboro, 17-year-old Danny Roberts of College Park, and 18-year-old Michael Curtis Jr. of Fairburn, and 2 juveniles whose names were not released due to their ages. Out of all these individuals that I just named, Danny and Mikey were the 2 guys that actually played on our basketball team for AAU. So remember in the prior tape, I talked about how when we were beefing with Hit Squad, that some of us in Palisades were playing AAU basketball. And the AAU basketball team, we would have practice at North Clayton Middle School, which is off of Riverdale Road in like northern Riverdale, North Clayton. But it's basically in Hit Squad territory, okay? And on Saturday mornings and afternoons, we would have basketball practice up there. At the time period, I was about 14, 15, so I played on the younger AAU team. But my homeboys, they played on the older AAU team. And on the older AAU team, some of these Hit Squad dudes we were beefing with, they were on that same team. And one of the Hit Squad dudes' father was the coach of the older AAU team. Okay? So that was one of the weird, ironic, paradoxical connections in this whole situation. That, some of the people that ultimately went down for this were niggas that was on the older AAU team that we used to see all the time, And 2 of the guys, I just named their names, Danny and Mikey, you know what I'm saying? The niggas in the Crown Vic. If you heard me mention the Crown Vic in the prior tape, that's them, you know what I'm saying? Let's continue. Scott, Womack, and both juveniles were charged with affray. Roberts was also charged with aggravated assault, terroristic threats, and being a person under 18 in possession of a weapon. One of the juveniles, a 16-year-old Riverdale youth, was also charged with aggravated assault and weapon possession by someone under 18. Curtis was charged with terroristic threats. Now, this Curtis that I'm talking about in this video, that's not the character Curtis from video 1, okay? This Curtis is the real name or the real last name of one of the Hit Squad dudes that we was beefing with, all right? So listen up, we about to get deeper into this. So now we're going to go into the objective report on what allegedly happened at the house party, okay? So this is based on what the investigators have, because the media broadcasters that created this journalism, that's where they getting their information from. And these investigators, remember, they interviewed everybody that was involved when once people were apprehended. So let's see what they say. 2 men opened fire at a house party on the night of the incident, shooting 4 people and killing one of them, Turner said previously, adding that the killing could have been payback following a fight at Mundy's Mill High School. So something also that was happening a lot is people were connecting the fight at Mundy's Mill on Friday that involved myself with the shooting of Larry that happened that Saturday. They're not directly connected like you would think, but I'll say this. The 2 rival crews or the 2 rival so-called gangs, we had been beefing already for a long time before that. So Were the streets hotter that Saturday because of what we did in school that Friday? I would say yes, they were. Were there probably a little more hit squad niggas riding around? I would say yes. But I won't say that the fight that we had Friday in school actually led to Larry's death, if you understand what I'm saying. Okay. So let's continue. It says a man in fatigues with an assault rifle and another man with a handgun shot Bishop. Deshaun Womack, 20 of Jonesboro, and another one of my boys I grew up with, you know what I'm saying, my boy Ski, and LaCanzie McCord, 16 of McDonough. So what ended up happening ultimately was, once again, you know, we're gonna leave this general and leave some cliffhangers. But according to, you know what I'm saying, the dude Art, I just read it right here. It says, Turner said Abercrombie, and let's go back up. So remember, Abercrombie, this is Art. This is the dude who ultimately got charged with Larry's death, the dude Art. But his last name is Abercrombie. We're going to call him Art, though. Turner, meaning the police, said Art claimed Larry fired at him first with a handgun. Art is scheduled to appear in court this morning. So what the dude Art told the police is that Larry and them pulled up. Larry opened fire on them first. They returned fire, and then Larry got hit. Okay? And from what I was told, this is also what happened. Because remember, y'all, I'm not finna sit here and paint Larry like he was no fucking victim. Larry was on go time. Did you hear what I just said? Larry was on go time. And what was going to happen in this situation is that either Larry was going to get one of them or one of them was going to get Larry. Let me say that one more time. Where Larry's mindset was, where Larry's psychology was when he pulled up that night to that house party in Whaley's Lake. Based on Larry's actions, Larry was either going to get one of them or one of them was going to get Larry. Larry was Mr. All or Nothing. Mr. All or Nothing is a South Side of Atlanta trait. You know what I'm saying? That I typically associate with brothers who just didn't give a shit. And it was either, you know, once again, it's either all or nothing. So this dude, Art, what ended up happening is after the investigation, you know, went through and they interviewed Art, and I'm sure they interviewed other people, they came to a conclusion that what he said was true, which was that Larry pulled up shooting first. And in self-defense, they returned fire, okay? The dude Art had an assault rifle or the AK-47, and somebody else had a handgun. So that's why I said that in the prior tape, that Larry was hit multiple times. He was hit by the AK-47 assault rifle that the dude Art had, and he was hit by a handgun that one of his people had. So when Larry pulled up, Larry started shooting and letting off rounds. They look and seeing where the rounds coming from. They return fire. More than likely, they already had their firearms drawn, because prior to Larry and them pulling up, once again, lack of strategic planning, other crews and gangs that we were connected with, they had already come through before Larry and got into it with them same guys as well. So before Larry and them pull up, they already armed and prepared and aware. And because I think there was a lot of sloppy communication, let's just say that certain things happened at the party that made them alert to the fact that these niggas may come back. So they got into it with some people at the party. The people that they got into it with left, and the people that they got into it with were connected to us. They are alert. They're cautious now because they thinking that the people going to come back. So now I'm thinking that they sitting outside the house party already with their guns drawn. Larry and them pull up, not really having all this information, I don't think. Larry starts shooting, and these guys shoot back. And that's ultimately what happened. And Larry was hit multiple times, and he did not die immediately, okay? You know, he was taken to the hospital, and then he died from his wounds in the hospital, all right? And also during the same time period, my brother Ski, you know, he got shot in the arm during all this, okay? So this is ultimately what happened. So the guy Art, he was charged with malice murder at first, but if I can remember correctly, when I looked at some information on him a couple of years ago, I think his charge got reduced to manslaughter. So it went from a malice murder to a manslaughter. And you know why I went from malice murder to manslaughter? Because Larry initiated the shooting. So when those details came out, now it makes it look like not an Art guy can kind of paint a picture like he was defending himself and returning fire, and Larry was hit from that. Okay. So that's how it was reduced from manslaughter. No, that's how it was reduced from malice murder to manslaughter. Because the dude Art, I believe he's out of jail right now. I don't think he did 10 years for it. I think he may have done between, let's say, maybe 8 to 10 years or something like that. I think it was less than 10. And the reason why is because Larry pulled up blasting at them niggas. So we're not finna sit here and paint no picture, and we're not finna rewrite history. I don't like when a Caucasian man tries to rewrite history. We know that the Aboriginal Americans were a melanated Negroid people, but he rewrites history and tells them that no, there were these pale Australian Mongoloid people who were here. We know that the blackamoors of Europe were actually the nobility of Europe, but he rewrites history and says that no, it was Caucasian people when they really were the Slavs and the serfs. So if I don't like when the Caucasian white boy rewrites history, I'm not finna let no street niggas rewrite history. So no, Larry was not a victim. What happened is that it was a gunfight. Unfortunately, Larry was overwhelmed and he was outgunned for a variety of reasons that I'm not gonna get into right now. And the guy Art had an assault rifle, and he was a little bit older, so maybe he was used to using it, so he knew how to use it, and he returned fire. Okay. So that's ultimately what happened. So hopefully you gain some insight from this and you learn something. And as I said, when the Lord sees fit in that right space and time, we will examine this story more. And I will bring in, brothers that I grew up with that were involved and that have their own perspective of all this. So this is going to turn into something much bigger. This is just starting. And I'm going to be very, very clever about how we do it. And we're going to go on a journey. So we got the Larry song out right now from Pakistan and New Jerusalem by the brother Aleen. Y'all please go salute and support him and listen to the song. And please, y'all, please listen to the Larry song and leave comments in it. You know what I'm saying? Let me know that y'all heard it. Y'all fuck with us on that, man. But, rest in power to the brother Larry. And we're going to continue to learn from this, and we're going to continue to spread positivity and healing from Larry's story. And we're going to make something good come out of this, all right? So y'all continue to rock with us here in the Midnight Mirage and the Red Stick family. All the Amp Squad brothers, the 220 brothers, the Mafia brothers, those that I'm still in connection with, that I've reached out to, and those that I still will reach out to. We have to be accountable and do our due diligence at the very least to tell these stories appropriately, to provide some kind of a healing and lesson tool to the communities. At the very least, that's what we can do. We can do that at the very least. And then we got to tell the truth, because Larry is not here to tell what happened. And I'm going to say this and then I'm going to end it. One of the things that used to haunt me the most about the Larry situation was sometimes I would think on the pain that he was feeling, and maybe the fact that he probably was scared when he was on the ground, hit multiple times, and he was bleeding, seeing people leaving and seeing people running and stuff like that. That part bothers me a little bit. You know what I'm saying? To this day, the fact that my nigga was just by himself like that in that space and time. Because when you born, you are alone. And when you die, you're going to be alone. And just him in that pain at that moment, losing consciousness, that part bothers me a little bit, But as I said, we're going to just do our best to create some positivity out of all this. And keep things going forward and keep this brother's name alive. So once again, love to the brother Larry. Stay tuned. We out.